What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode number 281 of the A2D From Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, and share the link with your friends. If you'd like to get our curriculum, you can get the paperback or ebook of From Ashes to Destiny on Amazon. Today's episode again is number 281, and it's entitled Worse Than Strangers. Just a heads up as we start this episode, I made this episode in response to the feedback I was getting from the last two episodes, and specifically from people working in homeless shelters and rehab saying, how do we get into really handling one of these topics in a discussion? How do we go deeper? So I've picked the topic of estrangement, and I'm going to lead you through the podcast episode today, going through the Russian dolls, the way we do when we're working with people going through the curriculum. If you're confused about this, but you've got my books, go to page 80 and you'll see the Russian dolls and an explanation of how to go through them there. So I got the title for this episode, Worse Than Strangers, from a quote written by Jane Austen in her last complete novel, published in 1817, entitled Persuasion. The quote is part of a letter written by Navy Captain Frederick Wentworth to Anne Elliot, who had broken their engagement and his heart 8 years earlier. Here's the quote. "There could have never been two hearts so open, no tastes so similar, no feelings so in unison, no countenances so beloved. Now they were as strangers, nay, worse than strangers, for they could never become acquainted. It was a perpetual estrangement." You got it? This worse than strangers is when we get to that point of estrangement, and for many of us it feels like a perpetual estrangement, and often is. So what's the definition of estrangement? If you look online at one of the online dictionaries, it'll tell you that it's the state of being alienated or separated in feeling or affection, and often includes a state of hostility or unfriendliness. So let's dig into this a little bit deeper. It can be that, as the quote from the book, someone ended an engagement. You're no longer in love. They've said, I don't love you anymore. It can be where you're emotionally detached or distant, or physically not in the same house anymore. Or if you're in the same house, it could be that you're living with little or no communication, hardly any talking at all. People have stopped listening to each other. It can be a loss of friendship, where possibly you grew apart over the years, you have got nothing in common anymore, so you just don't communicate anymore. This estrangement can come as a result of abuse, feeling rejected or neglected or abandoned. It can come as a divorce in a marriage, and not only between the couple, but to the children when they lose a parent as the result of a divorce. It can be actions that someone's taken, and children might hear, you're not my son anymore, you're not my daughter anymore. And so all these things can create this state of estrangement that we have. And I want to ask you, who are the people that were once close to you that you are now estranged from? And talking about the Russian dolls, we'll jump right in at the feelings one. So what are your feelings about that estrangement? Are they feelings of loneliness, sadness, confusion, a profound sense of loss? Maybe you're feeling anger or guilt or shame. Maybe you're still in shock, even if it happened many, many years ago, and you just don't even know what to do with this shock that you're feeling. Okay, so I'd like you to be able to grab a hold of which feelings are ones that you're feeling. And then I want to ask you, what are your thoughts that sort of lie underneath these feelings? What's been bouncing around in your thought life that set you up for these emotional feelings that you have? Perhaps you have thoughts that this is awful, or my life is awful. I can't stand this being estranged. Maybe your thoughts are, I'm unloved and I'm unlovable. Maybe your thoughts are, I have low self-esteem, or actually, I have no self-esteem anymore because I'm worthless. Some of you may have thoughts of, I have no future, no hope, no dreams, no reason for any of them. And these thoughts and feelings, questions that I asked, remind me of a quote by Mary Elizabeth Braddon, who said, when once estrangement has arisen between those who truly love each other, everything seems to widen the breach. You got that? Once we've got these thoughts and feelings going on, almost everything seems to widen the breach in this estrangement, no matter what it is. Okay, so I want to ask you, what behaviors have these thoughts and emotions fueled in you? Have you just given up on life, given up and quit, given up on a job, a home, a relationship? Just say that's it, and you're acting like I, don't need to do anything. I'm just gonna hang, just sit, just be by myself. Or maybe you turn to something to numb the pain of the estrangement and have got caught up in addiction. Or maybe you're chasing a high to try to add some artificial fun in your life. And so you're going for stimulation and also ended up in addiction. Perhaps your behavior became withdrawn and you became someone who isolates, and have convinced yourself you've always been a loner, and so your behavior is being a loner. Maybe you've just gotten quiet, and that's been a big behavioral change in you. You used to talk a lot, but now you just sit quietly because it's too painful to even talk about anything, because people might ask you about the loved ones that you're no longer in a relationship with. Maybe your behavior is one where you've become careful and edgy and nervous because you're feeling that I've got to be careful. I don't ever want to experience this pain again, so I've got to be careful in every friendship and every conversation so I don't set myself up for this pain again. So again, what are your behaviors that you can tie into being fueled by your thoughts and emotions? And I'd like to ask you, what are some new beliefs that probably settled into you, or possibly settled into you, that have fueled your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors? What are the shifts in your beliefs? Could it be that I believe I can't trust anyone anymore? Or maybe just the opposite. Could it be I need validation from people, so I tell my story to everyone, and I know that I need validation. I need them to hear my story and say, it's not your fault. Maybe a new belief is there's no place that's safe for me, so I have to keep moving. I'm afraid to settle down. I'd rather be a nomad, a vagabond, whatever, than try to find a place that's safe. Perhaps your new belief is that commitments are not worth it, and actually you fear any and all talk or opportunity for commitment. Maybe your new belief is I'll never be happy again, ever, and I'll never feel whole again. So a lot of stuff that could be going on in you as we get down to the belief system. And in the Russian dolls, the smallest doll is a core value. And to me, that's when these belief systems, these new beliefs that we have, get so strong that probably one, sometimes two, have really become a new core value for us, a new identity, the thing that really is controlling the rest of our life, so to speak. And I'm going to give you an example of a core value that could come out of someone who's going through estrangement. And that is the core value of, I'm going to live the rest of my life with a broken heart. And do you see how that core value would then form all the beliefs around that and all of the thoughts and feelings and behaviors? And that reminds me of the song by the Bee Gees, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? Here's a few of the lyrics. And how can you mend a broken heart? How can you stop the rain from falling down? Tell me, how can you stop that old sun from shining? What makes the world go round? And how can you mend this broken man? How can a loser ever win? Somebody please help me mend my broken heart and let me live again. I think that song really fits the estrangement topic that we've been talking about. And can you see how estrangement can affect almost every day, every minute of every day of your life? Well, if this really is speaking to you, this is a critical time to begin to find healing. Do you have someone to talk to, a counselor, a therapist, a pastor, a sponsor, or a coach? Is there someone who's never abandoned you, never rejected you, who's always been there and always had your back? This can be a fresh thing, and they're ready to dig in deep with you. And it's important when I say someone who's always been there, there's an anonymous quote that says, if someone isn't present during your most crucial time, then their presence any other time is useless. So you want to pick someone who's been there with you through the crucial times, and they're willing to be useful in your healing. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D From Addict to Disciple podcast. Hope I've stirred up some thoughts for you. If you'd like to reach out, you can contact me through the message link on this podcast or by email at davidfroma2d@gmail.com, or go to my website, www.froma2d.org, and click on the contact page. Keep listening to future podcast episodes, and as always, stay safe and stay resilient.